Okay. Well, today is what day did I say it was? It's actually the 28th today. I may have put on the 29th on the title there, but I think it is the 28th. This is kind of a surprise live stream. I decided that, I've thrown quite a bit of information out there over the last little while, and I thought, I really need to let some people ask some questions. So, as you can tell on here, I placed on the title, any questions. So I don't have my laptop set up, but I do have my other phone. I'm not going to take calls. We're not going to do that because that gets really hard to do. But I think what I will do is go ahead and look at this rather than looking at the chat on there. I think I'll try doing it here. It looks like it's going to work too. That's good. Let's see if I can bring it up here and get the chat. Yeah, that's working. I've got the chat here. We're looking good. I don't have to get close to the camera. See it? I originally got this so that we could have call-ins, but that's really hard to manage. And usually, nothing against anybody, but I'll ask for people to keep their questions to about a short 30 seconds, a minute question or comment. Let me turn this sound off. And invariably we'll get people that will want to tell their life story, and I understand, but it really isn't good for everybody else, so we won't have a call, and I'll just be taking it from the chat. So uh, as I said, the last three videos, all my videos, especially the ones on any kind of spiritual information, I know uh, raise a lot of questions, and so I thought I'd give you a chance to ask some of those. Hey, how you doing, Jesse? Yeah, this is more like it. Yeah, I did some negotiations. I didn't think it was going to work. It took me some time. Anyway, things finally worked out. I wasn't supposed to be able to do live streams yet, but it looks like that was altered at the last minute. So that's a good thing, right? I guess. Uh, anyway, I noticed one of the comments on I think it was my last video. I'd said something like, I don't drink alcohol when I'm doing spiritual presentations, and usually I won't drink any for some time prior to that. And that's what I said. I haven't had any alcohol for just a couple days at that point when I did that video the other day. And my comment was because I don't drink when I give these spiritual discussions, and I haven't had any in a while. And somebody wrote in and said, "Yeah, you seem a lot sharper now that you've abstained from the alcohol." Well, it's only 2 days, okay? So I'm here with my scotch. All right, so yeah, this is Glenfiddich 12, which is one of my favorite go-tos. And since this isn't a particularly spiritual discussion, I want to avoid those spiritual questions, obviously, because I've got this up from the last video and addressing some of those, but it's not specifically for that. I mean, we could get into the debacle that happened in Canada with the Nazi. I guess I shouldn't say that on YouTube, but that's exactly what happened. Here we've been saying what's going on in Ukraine and what the problem is there, and then it's spread out in Canada on in the Parliament with the PM there. He really ought to be called BM. You know what BM is, right? Bowel movement. He should be called BM Trudeau. Hope I don't get thrown off YouTube after just coming back for saying that, but yeah, that's just the way it is. These leaders are all so they don't deserve to be where they are, and all they are is tyrants, and they're obeying some evil people that have promised them something, or maybe even entities from other worlds, other dimensions. I don't know what's going on, but they definitely aren't decent people. They're very evil. Newsom was approached by Luke Radowski of We Are Changed, asking about why he had done what he did during the sickness, and of course he avoided it. They always do, and they'll pretend like they were right all along. They won't ever address the issues, And some terrible things are happening in California right now, as they are in New York, and of course the border, there in Texas and Arizona and some of those other places. Our leaders have sold us out completely and have gone along with these supposed treaties about taking in refugees, and these aren't refugees. And I think you folks know that. And again, I could get in trouble with YouTube for saying that, but you know, that's sometimes you just got to speak your mind. There's a lot of crazy things going on. I'm not going to discuss political things specifically or military things specifically tonight unless you ask a question. Uh, as I've said, so many people are doing such a good job on that, and I just figured that certainly my expertise is in military, law enforcement, law. I was even a pre-med student, so I do know some things about medical situations. I could comment about all that. I ran for political office at one point in time. I'm somewhat politically astute, but like I said, I think my expertise is spread out a little bit more than that. And we need to really talk about what's important to our core right now, because everything that's happening is taking our mind off of that, and I think it's on purpose. I did notice something that was kind of interesting the other day. I was listening to a rabbi talk. No, I'm not Jewish, okay? I'm not Jewish, but I give a lot of respect to those writings. Not the Talmud so much, of course, but the Torah, the Tanakh, with quite a few exceptions. The Tanakh is the whole Old Testament, and then you've got the New Testament too. As most of you know, I have a lot of reservations about that. Genesis 1 through 11, yeah, I'm pretty solid on that. But after that, there are a lot of issues that come up, and so I'm very, I think, upfront about my concerns with those. And I do have respect for some of the, there's Kabbalah, which was basically the development of Hekkelot after the Second Temple was destroyed, because after the Second Temple was destroyed and they lost all the ritualistic implements, including the ashes of the red heifer and some other things. And certainly, who are the Cohens? Who are the real priests that can perform that? That was actually lost during the Babylonian captivity. So there are all kinds of problems with all of that, which is why I don't look forward to a third temple. I don't think that's the case. I actually think maybe the idea that the temple without hands is the people. I don't go so far as to say the cliche body of Christ. I think that's taking it too far. But whatever. The fact of the matter is that I do have quite a bit of respect for the mystical things. There's the Black Kabbalah, which you stay away from. I don't touch that. There's a good side and a bad side to everything, as I've talked about before. I studied Kabbalah for many years. I'm still not an expert, even though I was taught by rabbis and by Kabbalistic masters. And they're not the type that the Kabbalah Center in LA that you have, Madonna joined and all that, there's some good things there, but a lot of it's just not what it's supposed to be about. So I stuck with the basic concepts of Hekkelot and the type of Kabbalah that came out of that. And you see me talk about that all the time, with the breakdown of the letters and the words, and then the words within the words, and those types of things. That's where I've really focused, and I think that's been very fruitful. And I hope that most of you believe that is the case as well. Okay, there's a question here. When is the USA military draft for World War III starting? Don't partake in it. I'll just say it right up front. Don't partake in it. Refuse it. Just don't do it, especially not for your daughters. Women, no. Men shouldn't either. But I'm just telling you, stay out of this. Stay out of this. Tell them, you've got the one finger pointing at them, okay? You just don't do it. Right now, apparently, they've lost so much in that little place over there in Europe that Zelensky's running around trying to get hold on to support. They're now bringing women, and I told you that was going to happen, and they're going to do it here. Okay, don't do it. Don't take part in it. Conscription is force, and if you take part in your rights, government doesn't give you rights. They're supposed to protect you in your God-given rights. They don't They can't stop you exercising your rights because of some quote unquote emergency. That means that the Constitution then is I know, uh, legal man. I forget what his other name is. He's a really good attorney. I follow him on X. He's right. The Constitution is dead. It has been for over 100 years, 100 and something years. But if it ever really worked to begin with, but still the principles are the same. As far as you being a person, you're not a subject of this government. The the government is supposed to protect you under contract with you to protect you in the exercise of those rights. And they've abrogated that. They don't do it. They think that in declaring an emergency, then the Constitution comes subservient to their emergency, and it's just not true. It's not true at all. It's a lie. It's tyranny, and they've got all kinds of reasons to say it, but it's wrong. Can we count on them to follow it or to fix it? No. This is going down. You've heard me say that for a long time. So as far as the draft is concerned, yes, and they're going to come after your wives, your daughters, your girlfriends. Don't let them do it. Tell them to go shove it where the sun don't shine. All right. But yeah, they want that. Remember this entire thing that's been happening for many decades, actually longer than that. I don't want to get into that in too much detail tonight, but it's all about destroying mankind. Okay. The people that are controlling all this want to destroy you. They want to destroy your posterity. They want to destroy your spirit. That's why I started to do these other things, to show you that you're not descended from apes or from some fish that crawled out of the water. That you have a dignified, wonderful, I said you're wonderfully made. Awfully meaning off in awe. You should be in awe about how you're made. And these people that really pushed the idea that God made Adam out of some clay on the ground. I mean, I know the scripture says he's made out of the dust of the ground, but he didn't put it together, as I've said, like a brick. And then, somehow life came into it. That's to demean you. That's to debase you of what you are. I even hear rabbis going along with that, even though they should know better. Um, Saying that you're a clump of clay means that you're not much more than just a chemical process. Well, think about it, as I did in that video here the other day with Dr. Tour. I did a link to an interview that he did. The intricacy of just the one cell, They can't even make that now. One cell. No, this was put together by a supreme intelligence, and we need to be in awe and respect of that being. You may not understand that being. I only very small bit do I understand it. There will be people that say they do, but I don't want to go there. I hear the rabbis talking about this soul thing, for instance, and they forget how important this physical is. It's not something to just be thrown away. It's kind of a useful tool, but its purpose isn't to go away forever. If that's the case, then God made something that isn't eternal. He can't do that. So he has to have a way to get this back together with the Spirit. So I listen to these two rabbis, just so you know. They're both Kabbalistic rabbis. And it's very obvious that one's a Pharisee in his philosophy. He believes in the resurrection, for instance. And then the other one is definitely a Sadducee. All he talks about is the ethereal. That when you leave here, you just go into the ethereal, and the soul has a journey, and you're gonna. He'll go on with reincarnation, but I don't want to get into that here tonight. But at any rate, the point is that I expose myself to a lot of these different things so that because there's strains of truth, and then I can see where these things go together. All right. So anyway, I'm talking too much. We're no golem. Yeah, we're not golems. And it was interesting that the golem was the name of that creature in Lord of the Rings, right? And I'm sure that wasn't an accident on Tolkien's part. But a golem was made by, I forget the rabbi Kabbalist's name, supposedly around I think it was around the 15th century. I've got the information here somewhere. First of all, I don't believe he did it. He supposedly made this golem to protect the Jews who were being attacked by the people at that time. I think it was in Spain. But I don't believe that. I think it was a legend. But the point is that they tried to do what God did with the clay, and that's not what we are. So don't let them demean you like that and say that you're just made out of clay. I explained the other day what it means that you'll return from where you were made. They were thrown out of the Garden of Eden and thrown back to where they came from. And yes, possibly they did die. I think there's some questions about that as far as Adam and Eve are concerned, but I'm not going to go there tonight. And to prove it, I'm going to take a sip of my scotch. Okay, anybody got some scotch with you or anything else? This is 12-year-old, and it's been sitting for probably 20 minutes. So you let scotch air out. I think most of you know that. You let it air out for a minute for each year that it is old. Okay, thoughts on Big Mike to replace Biden. We're a degenerate, debased, disgusting society right now. The heartland, there are a lot of good people. There are a lot of good people here, just like there are everywhere. But the evil has us by the short hairs. Yeah, we're Sodom, Jesse. I'm looking at that still instead of on here. I'll try to not come that close to the phone. Yeah, as a matter of fact, I saw something yesterday. Maybe even you said it, Jesse. If God doesn't do something about this wicked, wicked land, and that includes Europe, Western Europe, Hawaii, you know, I could go on, New Zealand, even Australia. If God doesn't punish these people, he needs to apologize to Sodom and Gomorrah. Yeah, he does. And I say that. You know, I'll be honest. The way I pray, I say, you know, I basically say it that way. You know, you might owe them an apology if you're not going to take care of this, because we can't. They've got the surveillance they put up was to prevent us and the spirit that God gives us to keep us from doing anything about it. We'd have to be ordained with great power from on high to be able to fight this thing. And it's not going to be done with bullets. Okay? You can defend yourself with bullets, but you're not going to take down these evil governments with bullets. You're not going to do it. It's going to have to take the power of God. Absolutely. No matter how you think of God, that's the only answer right now. And so that's, again, why I go to these subject matters, especially about our relationships with each other and the fact that we're supposed to take care of each other, doing, you know, the two great commandments: love God. You may not understand him, but at least you have an awe of him. You respect him. The first, or one of the commandments, of course, is honor thy father and thy mother. Well, he's our father, so we need to honor him, give him the respect that's due him. And the second is, you know, to love your fellow man. So with those two things, we can navigate all of this, but we've got to put away all this terrible stuff that's going on right now. We need to stay away from it. Call it out. That's necessary, I think. But you know, don't get so immersed in it that that's all you think about. You know, try to switch your mind and your heart to the things that really matter, which is a continuation in eternity of the good things. Remember, Eden was a place of pleasure, as I've shown you. Eden means pleasure. God wants you to have pleasure. He doesn't dislike it. He just wants you to use it for the right purposes, to solidify with your friends, to enjoy the good food, to breathe the clean air, to have a deep and loving and soulful, not just, that's probably the wrong word. I better not use that one. To have a deep, intimate relationship with your loved ones, your spouse. Because that's the building block. And I've shown you God's family, his system is in the YHVH. I've shown you that many, many times. Okay. Getting on religious discussions here. Let's see if we've got anything out here. So anyway, Big Mike, Will Big Mike become president? It's right now. I think it's a toss-up as far as the Democrats are concerned between Michelle, Mike, and Gavin Newsom. And no matter which way that goes, it's bad. But I don't trust Trump. I don't think there's anybody else in the GOP that can do it. I don't know how this is going to work out. I don't understand all the financial parts of this or how that works in the election campaigns and all that. But I really don't understand how Trump will get through this. But I do think that there's something about him in Isaiah 52. So we'll see. All we can do is watch at this point. I can't believe I didn't even watch the GOP debates the other night. I can't stand to listen to those people. I have a lot of respect for Ron DeSantis, but even he's done stuff that just doesn't make any damn sense. You're either going to be what you are for the American people, or you're going to give your citizenship up and put it somewhere else. I mean, it's just ridiculous. So anyway, but yeah, I think it's very possible that that's going to happen. Yorktown says, Colonel, I don't think God will act because he gave us free will. There are people here that are using that free will. So he will act, but he will act probably through some very special chosen ones. A lot of Christians look towards, the two witnesses, that kind of thing. I don't want to get into that, but I just reposted Elon Musk's live stream from on X. I reposted it, and he's down there trying to show what's going on. Elon Musk, however you feel about him, and Mike Cernovich said, this man needs to be protected. He's really coming up against the establishment in a lot of ways. I hope he's got a good, strong security detail. But at any rate, there will be people like him. I'm not saying God has given him any special thing, although that's very possible. I'm not there to judge that. We have to watch what the fruits are, but it will be done through men. Men will finally do it, but it'll be under God's umbrella, under God's protection, under God's direction. Like I've talked about with the angel of the Lord. When God said, the angel of the Lord, he has my name written in him. He has my name in him. Therefore, do what he tells you to do. Right? And I've talked about the I am and all of that. So, yeah, there are those who are willing. They just don't have the power. So we're looking for the power to now be basically given to some people that are righteous enough to handle it and will obey the still small voice. Okay, I didn't mean to get into all that. 10-nation confederation is coming. I don't know how the state. I've been calling on the states for a long time, and I'm just a small voice. The National Guard is not the militia. Yeah, the two witnesses. I think you're right, Jesse. I just have some different ideas about what those are, and I think you've heard me talk about those before. But whatever, I think that is going to have to be the case. And there's something about the latter-day Davidic Messiah too, as opposed to the suffering servant and all. And I've talked about all that in my religion spiritual series. I'm just not sure who it is, or if I'm sure they're here right now. I'm sure they are. I don't know that they know who they are, whether it's the two witnesses or people that God has given the power to. There was in the Old Testament, if you recall, there was a prophet who wasn't even an Israelite. His name was Balaam, and he even the Hebrews, even the Israelites knew that he was a real prophet, and he had nothing to do with the Israelites. As a matter of fact, he was kind of against them, and the king wanted him to call down God's power against the Israelites, and Balaam, who was a prophet, said, I can only do what God tells me to say, and he's not going to tell me to do that, so I can't. Sorry. The only thing that you can do, and this is how they're attacking us right now, probably better than anything else, is make them do bad things. Give them hearts of degeneracy. Get them to do the bad things so that God will then punish them. What are we seeing right now? Don't you realize, and I'm not talking to just you, Jesse, I'm talking to everybody. It's like I've said for a long time, they're promoting all this degeneracy and debauchery and questioning times and laws. and changing, men and women, all this stuff. They're doing that because there will be people who will accept it and do it to their destruction. And the powers that be are gleeful about that. Remember, they're trying to destroy mankind. So trying to get you to do what you shouldn't do, you do it, not them, is kind of how they operate. Okay. Okay. Let's see what we got here. There, DC88 says, DS88 says, their hubris always gets the best of them. They won't win. Don't worry. Yeah, and pride goes before the fall. You're right. But a lot of destruction and a lot of suffering can happen in the meantime. We already saw that during, well, we're seeing it in Ukraine right now. We saw it during the 3.5 years of the sickness, which they're trying to bring back, right? So our own courts don't obey their own laws. Look what's happening to, again, I'm not a Trump fan, but I recognize injustice when I see it, even if he wants it because he wants to be the suffering servant of Isaiah 52. What the New York DA is doing to him, the AG there in New York and the DA in New York City, they just said that he can't have any businesses in New York City, right? Whether all this is real or just part of the play, I don't know, but it's still injustice shown to the people, and how you look at it, how you respond to it, says a lot about you. Remember, one time I think I've said this a number of times. You see sins in other people, not to pass judgment on them, but to then turn around and look internally to you to see if you have that weakness yourself, and then fix it. All right. Okay. Oh, that's a good one. Again, I wanted to stay off spiritual stuff, but we've already done. Bubba Joe asked, why are the offspring of the Nephilim denied a soulmate? Because they didn't have one before they came. The quote in the New Testament that Jesus is supposedly have made, I've explained that before. He's talking to some Jews who said, hey, there was this guy who died, and his wife, then married the next guy, and then he died, and then married the next guy, and he died. And whose wife is she? Well, he had just said that the people he was talking to were vipers and serpents. In other words, they were the descendants of the Nephilim. So this friend of theirs is one of them. They don't get to have a mate because they didn't have one before they came. Now, in the book of Enoch, there's some difficulties with that. Book of Enoch, the fallen angels, want to go down and have children by earth women. And there's this little smidget in the book of Enoch that supposedly God says to these angels, hey, if you're eternal beings, you don't need wives. That's not what you're about. So you've taken something upon you that you shouldn't have. I personally think that's a misunderstanding in the translation. I think what it was really saying was, because the fallen angels had mates, in my opinion, because they were born, they were made male and female in the image of God. That's why they're called Elohim, B'nai Elohim. But and not all the B'nai Elohim fell. It was just this group. And there are questions about how many there were, 7, 200, whatever. It depends upon what story you read. But in Enoch, when this accusation comes out, you don't need wives. I really think what that was about was them. It was kind of like they were crossing over. Eternal beings aren't supposed to come and have relations with earthly women. Earthly women are still in the earthly state, in the mortal state. And until that rises up, they're not supposed to. Well, just put it this way: they didn't come along this road. These B'nai Elohim, they didn't come along this road with those women. They came down and usurped them, and it was in another kingdom that they weren't supposed to enter and do that. So I think that's where the disconnect came in. But anyway, that's my own personal opinion because, in my opinion, if we don't have a mate after this, I don't think any of this is worth it. And you might as well just ask God to annihilate me now because that's that's the thing that. And, I listen to these uh, life coaches. Roy, this is why Christ said you must be born from above. Yeah, yeah, exactly, Jesse. And you pointed that out very well one day. Yeah, it's not being born again. It's that if you aren't born from above, you don't have any of the rights that the ones that are born from above, in other words, that were part of the begotten sons and daughters of God, you don't have their rights. And that's exactly right. So thanks for bringing that out, Jesse. Anyway, I kind of lost my train of thought there, but I think you know what I'm saying. Well, here we are. Okay, I'm going to take another sip of this. I'm hoping you'll give me some political stuff to talk about. We haven't done that in a long time, but I will answer direct questions on these last three things I've done. Yeah, that's right. All in my head. Adam was not deceived. Matter of fact, he was the type and shadow of Jesus Christ, really, of the Messiah. In other words, he took Eve was deceived, and he agreed to fall to take her sin upon himself. So he was really her savior. Is really what it was. Brett Lucas says, "Where in the Scripture does it say that?" I'm not sure who you're addressing there, Brett Lucas. I've taken great pains to show you that the literal storyline in the Scriptures are not complete. They can't be. There's no way they can be. And if you don't understand the inner workings of the language, as I've shown you many, many times, you will miss the more beautiful parts and the most important parts of those scriptures. And I really hang on to Genesis 1 through 11. That's really the crux of it for me. And I even understand, as I've talked about many times, how those things came about. The whole situation with Deuteronomy being found by the high priest in the temple. Being found, they didn't know that Deuteronomy is around, the book of the law, and this high priest finds it and comes to King Josiah and says, "Hey, look at this. We better do this." Well, they didn't know it before, so you see there's some problems. And even the scriptures tell you there are these problems in there. I'm going to lose power, so I got to plug this in. Hold on a second. I apologize. You know how this works. Okay, now we'll have power for a while. There are all kinds of problems. That's why I get a kick out of these. Even the rabbis, they have respect for the Torah, of course, but really they teach from the Talmud. Did you know that? They have the Torah reading in the synagogues. Not all of them. They're supposed to do it, but they do the Torah reading throughout the year, right? But almost inevitably, when they quote something or they tell a story, it's out of the Talmud. Okay? And that's how they explain things. And I'm not saying that's always bad, but it's also not always good. All right? So, asking where it is in the scripture, that's why I've shown you. It's like the situation with Zelim. When I pointed that out to you, that Zelim, the word for image that's used in Genesis 1, there where God creates man in his image in his own likeness. The image is Zelim. And everybody tries to say, oh, that's this, it's a worshiping an idol, and so it's a false god. It's in the word. It says you're supposed to be his representative here in this life. You're supposed to act like God. In other words, not be God, but have his attributes. So do the right thing. Conduct yourself righteously. That was the intent. Take care of it. He even says it, right? Here's this garden. Take good care of it. Take care of it. In other words, take care of everything in it. Use your judgment righteously. That's right in the word. Zade, righteous. Lamed, flail, judgment. Mem, here on the earth. Zelim. The Demuth one, as I talked about, I showed you the other day. We went through that. It's something about submitting yourself to this life to die so that God can raise you up in a perfect form. Do I understand why it has to be that way? Not really, because there were some, apparently, at least according to the scriptures, like Enoch, Elijah, possibly Moses, certainly Melchizedek, Shem, City of Salem, if you study some of the ancient writings on that, you say, wow, that's not, maybe he was one of those that went through too and didn't have to go through it. Okay, should be living like the Essenes rather than the missing books purported by the post-council. Book banning of the Council of Nicaea. Yeah, well, the Council of Nicaea didn't really set up the scriptures. That's kind of a misnomer. They didn't really do that. There were other questions from the Marcionites that they were trying to resolve. It was actually some other uh, councils that actually chose the scriptures. It really wasn't Nicaea. Nicaea just set up kind of the parameters. Okay, so just so you know that. Trinity, boy, that's a big one. Um, the Trinity is the concept. I think is the way it's taught in Christendom is by and large not correct. That's all I'm going to say. Um, you have in your life right now, you have three parts to you. You have your physical, you have your spirit, and then you have this thing called the neshama, right? So you have the ruach, the spirit, you have the physical, and then this neshama, this other thing. It's kind of like the Holy Spirit. It's kind of the next step. You have your own spirit, so you're looking at kind of a trinity in you. Three things make you up. That's how I look at it, and I also fully accept the idea of Psalms 82 of a council of the gods. Okay, so I don't have the standard Christian understanding of the Trinity. Just like I actually totally dismiss the idea that Mary, the mother of Jesus, was never had sex to have Jesus. I don't. That doesn't make sense at all. And I don't care how people try to, maneuver around that. It doesn't make sense at all. And that Jesus wasn't married, because the fact of the matter was, if he's the Messiah, he can't sidestep that. And I've talked about that in my religion spiritual series. So go check that out if you need to. Rhonda, why does God help some and not others? That's a good question. I see these terrible things happening to the little people, like the earthquakes and all of that. We saw these earthquakes that happened here, in Morocco the other day, or we saw the tidal wave over in the Indonesian area back a decade ago, or like 250,000 people died. Why doesn't something happen to DC? Why doesn't something happen to, you know, I could mention some places, but then they'll say I'm making threats. So the point is, why didn't he help the 200 million people that were slaughtered in the 20th century? I do ask God about that all the time. I do. The rabbis answer it. The Kabbalistic rabbis say, well, it's because God doesn't care about the body. Kind of going back to what I said a few minutes ago. He only cares about your soul. I don't believe that at all. Jeremiah kind of said that, but I think the context was kind of like what Jesus said. They can kill the body, but they can't kill your soul. They can't kill what you really are. But that doesn't mean the body isn't important. Why would God spend all that time making even a single complex cell if he didn't think it was important? I don't know if I answered your questions, but that's unholy vessels. Yeah. If you're new here, Brett Lucas, you have to understand I don't have any respect for Paul. He was a plagiarist. He said what people wanted to hear, even admit it. I'm everything to everybody. Okay, and I did a whole book that sets. I never did the second volume, but I did a whole book that explains this idea of the Roman, basically the Roman military intelligence assault on the Messianic movement. So it's like Romans 13. That's totally misunderstood, and it was written to be that way. But I'm not going to go there right now. Who is Jesus, Brett? This is the last time I'm going to address you. Who is Jesus? What does he say? When you deny me, I'll deny you. Okay? He also said that my Father will write his law in your heart and in your mind. You may never have heard of Jesus. And somebody might come up, you've never heard of him, have never had it preached to you, and somebody comes up and says, you have to believe in Jesus. Well, first of all, that's force. You have to believe in Jesus to be saved. That's force. God doesn't work that way. So that's one real problem with evangelical Christianity and traditional Christianity in general. What it's talking about is that you have the heart of and the attributes of Jesus, not the personality standing in front of you and you're bowing down to him. I'm not saying he doesn't exist. I'm saying that you're missing the point. You're substituting an idol, in fact, for the change in your heart. And even Isaiah wrote about that. He says, I'm tired of all the sacrifices. He's quoting God. I'm tired of all the sacrifices. I'm tired of the blood of bullocks. Didn't he say to do these sacrifices? He says, I wanted a change in your heart. So don't force people to believe in this personage of Jesus. You're actually committing idol worship. That's going to drive the Christians nuts, but that's it. Jesus wanted you to be one with God. They will be one with me as I am one with you, and we are all one. In other words, you get those attributes. And then it goes on further to say, Paul does say this, that Jesus is going to inherit all that the Father has, and that we are joint heirs with him, which means we inherit all that the Father has. But does that mean you have to know Jesus personally here? No. It means you have to have the right heart. If God writes something in your heart, you better respond to it. Now, if you want to say, well, God's going to write in my heart to believe in Jesus, okay, I see where you're going. But really, what are you thinking about? Have you met him? Have you seen him? Have you touched him? Have you felt him? Or are you talking about what he stood for? Who's this? Keith Buck, you prefer vodka? Yeah. I'll have sometimes martinis I'll make with vodka, even though you're supposed to use gin. But sometimes I'll use vodka. It's just a little bit more palatable for me. So anyway, it depends. Okay. Okay, Brett, we're done. Okay, no more. Okay, I want to talk to other people now. Okay, so does anybody wonder what's happening here? When I gave that presentation, or the ones on the back of your head, or that you are marvelously made, or even going back a little further, the fortress, about the importance of the man-woman relationship and the family, and why the adversary attacked that right at the beginning in Genesis to show you how important it is. Does anybody have any questions there? If you come here trying to think that I'm a standard traditional Christian, you're wasting your time. You might as well go listen to, I don't know, what's that guy's name? I think he's in Texas or somewhere. He's kind of a tall, blonde guy. Joel. How did you know Joel Osteen? James McIver. How did you know I was talking about Joel? Yeah, Brett and you guys that think that way, go listen to Joel. He'll reinforce what you already think is true. Okay, he'll give you your bias, right? He'll confirm your bias. So go there. You're not going to get that from me. So if you're trying to preach to me and change me, you're not going to do it. And I've gone down this road way too far. Okay, and you're probably no, I don't like Joel Roy. Well, fine, but that's what you're saying. You're saying his kind of stuff. You're not going to get that from me. Okay, so don't do it. All right, we're not going to go there. You're not going to tell me that I have to accept your version of Jesus. That's a force, and I won't do it, and I'm not going to force it on any of my people that are on here. And you aren't either. I'll throw your ass off. All right? Understand each other? Okay. Trolls have no beliefs of their own. They just divide. Yeah, exactly. They're just. I'm not saying that people can't have a conversion, but then they think they got it all. Well, I thought I was converted several times, and I found out I didn't have it all. And then I started learning about the real nuts and bolts of the language that's in the Old Testament, in the Hebrew. And why I say, you can't interpret, you can't even trust Strong's or Gesenius, because they were bound by the institutions of their day not to go too far out. Well, I'm not under those constraints. I'm not getting a paycheck. I'm not. It's sort of, Strong's and Gesenius were very much like what you saw during the sickness last little while, where scientists were being paid to say what the establishment wanted them to. Gesenius and Strong's were no different. All right? I'm not under that restriction. And I've shown you why. Okay. 10 minutes behind on live. Huh. YouTube does a lot of crazy stuff, I know. Let's see here. I like that all in my head. Approach each other with kindness and honesty, both of which are mostly missing from our relationships with each other. That's good. Bubba Joe had a great question on the back of the head. Oh, did he? Good. Let me go back and see if I can find that. Hold on a second. Bubba Joe. I think, there's a lot of stuff in there in the Torah that science is kind of putting together. It looks like I can't find Bubba Joe's question. Yeah, the missing books are good. Like Michael Heiser said, you shouldn't ignore those. It doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt to look at them. There's good information there. It's kind of like the Talmud, the same thing. But you really got to know where the dividing lines are, and that takes time. So, it's like the Book of Adam and Eve, is a good example. The whole thing about the cave and the bodies and all. Yeah, see, that goes too far. Rhonda Dean says, do we hear the Father with our mind or with our heart? Well, what did he say? I will write their law in their hearts and in their minds. So you already got your question answered, Rhonda. Does the back of the head have anything to do with the verse about the camel? Verse about the camel. You mean the eye of the needle thing? No. No, it doesn't. And I know there are some people. If I've got you right here, Bubba Joe, the back of the head. I guess you could stretch it to the point where, okay, well, what was that? Some people said, well, with the camel, if this is the one you mean, had to get down on its knees to go through. Well, there's no real historical proof of that. It could be that it has to do with putting aside your lower, and I don't really want to call it that, but your basic biological processes. And I'm not putting down food, I'm not putting down water, I'm not putting down loving your wife or your husband. I'm not talking about that. But that putting those away, and that's really what happens when you open up the universe. And that's why Einstein, he says, if you can look out far enough, you'll see the back of your head. In other words, you're an eternal being, and this mortal sphere, this mortal state, is kind of temporary, but it's not going to be that much different when things are all settled. As far as the evil will be gone, it'll still exist in the universe. A lot of people say, "Oh, you go to heaven and it's peaceful and you never have another problem." Well, remember they said they had a war in heaven at one point in time. Well, they had it once. What's to keep them from happening again, right? Okay. So the back of the head, it's really important to see that there was a connection there, that you have something to do. It's all here, but if you look into that firmament, If you can make the right selection, you will see yourself. And then I pointed out that God, when Moses said to God, "Show me your glory," and this is out of Genesis now, we're into Exodus. Some problems there, but Moses said, "Show me your glory," and God says, "Oh, okay, I'll do that, but I'm going to put you in the cleft of the rock, and as I pass by, I'll put my hand over you so you can't see my face, and then I'll withdraw it so you can only see what? My back parts." There we are. See that? And the implications of what's happening there are so immense, along with "I will be whom I will be. The angel of the Lord has my name written in him, therefore do all that he says." It said all these things come down to some very important things about the family of God. Okay. Okay. That's a good Barry. Barry asks, any connection between the parable of the Good Samaritan and Jesus being a Samaritan? Ding, 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 ding. You get the prize, Barry. You get the prize. Remember, he was accused of being a Samaritan by the Jews. The story of the Good Samaritan. Yeah. There, there are different stages of this messiahship, and I've talked about that. And my opinion is that this person that was in the first century was actually the Isaiah 52 suffering servant who was supposed to die in his mission, and he was an Ephraimite Samaritan. I don't think he was Jewish at all. Jewish by nationality, not. He was not a Udite in my estimation. That sets a lot of people on fire, Barry. You know that. Paul Bagley, yeah, I've listened to Paul Bagley before. I'm not saying I subscribe, but yeah. Okay. Yeah, I don't know about I wasn't there. You got to understand there are so many things in the New Testament that were, I understand where these. I mean, as much as the scholars can understand what happened there, there was apparently it wasn't like all these things were just written by people that knew firsthand experience. Most of these were written after these stories had been passed down for a long time. So I'm not certain about that thing with the Mount of Transfiguration. I can't attest to that. There are some correlations, but I'm not certain that actually. I don't look at that as something I put a lot of stock in. I would much rather go and look at things like, um, the two great commandments that the person that as Jesus and that James, his brother, pushed. And I've already mentioned the royal law of the priesthood, the royal law of liberty. Love the Lord thy God and love your neighbor as yourself. I would much rather stay in those than a lot of the esoteric stuff. If I can't go back to the Hebrew and find it there, I put it up on a shelf because I'm not really sure that it's going to be of any efficacy, first of all. Does that mean that every Hebrew word you can use notarchon, which is what that is when you break these things down, like this one has muth in it when it's demuth, and then what each letter means? Does that always work? Well, you can't get too far out of what the translation is, unless you can do the translation using that all throughout the context, and then you can see it. If that doesn't work, then there might be some problems. So it's not 100%, but it's real close. But my point is, if I can't go back and find it in, especially the first 11 chapters of Genesis, if I can't find it there, I'm not so sure. Okay, I'm not so sure. Okay. Um, Again, getting back to the camel thing, the kuf, and I don't have this up here right now, the kuf, which is in the word for Ikea, which is firmament, The kuf looks kind of like the eye of a needle. It does in its shape. Okay, so there are some correlations there. I hope I explained that. So yeah, it has to do with using the cerebral cortex, and your eye, uh, and seeing that you're there, but you need to work on things. Kind of that's the idea of the eye of the needle, the kuf. Gospel of Thomas, Book of Enoch. I like the Gospel of Thomas. I like the Gospel of Philip as well. I like a lot of the Gnostic stuff, but I'm also very careful with it. We're talking about things that were put together 2 centuries after all this occurred. A lot of things got changed. Yes, some people, for instance, Jesus kissing Mary on her mouth often, and the disciples got jealous. The apostles got jealous. I think that really happened. If it didn't, uh, well, let me just put it this way: it shows that in fact he would have done what the Messiah was supposed to do. He's not supposed to be celibate. Celibacy is not a higher state of existence. It's not. And I get into these arguments with people all the time, and I'll just settle it like this: if you believe that Jesus was celibate and that you're supposed to follow Jesus, then what are you doing dating, getting married, having kids, and all that? Or would he have obeyed the commandment to multiply and replenish the earth? Yeah, that's true, Christopher Neal. Yeah, he did say, I'm not good, only God is good. Worship God. Yeah. The idea that Jesus, I better not get into that. If you all want to have a discussion on when Jesus became deified, go listen to Bart Ehrman, Professor Bart Ehrman, Professor Robert Eisenman, people that I've talked about before. These people that have done a lot of research. That's not saying that I agree with them wholeheartedly. Professor Eisenman was my mentor, one of them, and he's Jewish, and so he and I have some disagreements, but that's going to happen. As again, you have 3 Jews in a room, or three faithful in a room, and you're going to have. Let's put it that way, because it works the same way with Christians and everybody else. You have 3 believers in the room, you're going to have 5 opinions. So the point is that we do the work. We make the effort. Okay, we don't just accept everything carte blanche because somebody else's experience isn't yours. If you don't have the experience yourself, you're not responsible to believe another person's experience, even if they come and tell you. Especially if they refuse a cross examination, like in court. A witness is of no absolute. When you get these eyewitnesses, like there was this thing with the Brand guy. All right, I don't want to bring up his name here because apparently he can get thrown off for just mentioning his name. But the Brand guy, most of you should know what happened. 4 anonymous women came and accused him, and even Megyn Kelly got out there. We need to believe the women. We don't have the women. They aren't named anywhere. He's not being confronted by his accusers, like you're supposed to be able to. They can't be cross-examined to find out if they're telling the truth. It's hearsay. It's malevolent. It's gossip. If you can't cross-examine, person says you have to believe in Jesus because I do, because I've been changed. I've got this new spirit. I've been born again. That doesn't mean you have to accept it. They can testify to you, but unless you have that experience yourself, you're not responsible to obey or to follow them down those same paths. That's not true. Jesus is quoted as saying, blessed are those who believe and who have not seen. He didn't say, cursed are those who don't believe. We always take it a step too far, don't we? And not everyone here is human. Do you know what the word human actually means? God made man in his image. Male and female made he them. and called their name Adam. Adam. Who is human and who is man? There are humans, and they want you to believe that you are a human. If you understand linguistics, if you understand especially the origins of that word, and I think BP Earthwatch could, Jesse could substantiate this. Human means sub mankind. The that's why these people that say that God's name, is Yahuwah. God would not have a you in his name. That's sub. That's uh-oh, that's low. Okay? That's not the case. Human means sub-man. That's really what it means. Mankind is in the image of God. Humans are below God. So what you actually should be saying is, not everyone that's here is mankind. There are humans or subhumans or others than human. Just so you know what the linguistics is like, okay? Now, hue would mean color. No. Don't confuse that. No, hue is in color, but don't confuse that with the linguistic phonetic sound of ooh. Don't do that. Oh, that's always true. All in my head. Evil. It says in the scriptures there that, and it's true. The sons of darkness are wiser than the children of darkness are wiser than the children of light. Yeah, the children of the devil, the children of evil, make these plans, to do things to you, to set you up to make you choose wrong, like what we said at the beginning here, when they offer these terrible things to you, and they want to see who's going to take it, and then they can justify destroying you. For instance, the whole TRAN thing, right? So they wanted to say, God, we gave them this, we gave them a choice, and they took the bad one. Therefore, they deserve to be destroyed. You can't blame us. That's how it works. Um, there's hybrids here in legions. Yeah, I think that's the case right now. I think that's the case. Um, Going back, since I said I wanted to kind of cover this, does anybody want to ask about this situation here? Did I cover that sufficiently that the point is clear? Did everybody who watched that know what I was talking about? In other words, again, that the idea that the Egyptians, especially the northern kingdom, were actually Hebrews, Hyksos. They weren't pagans in the sense of not being of Hebraic origin. They were Shemites. So uh, the idea of a dying and resurrecting God, an Egyptian, we also find it there when God says he made us in his likeness. And the word demuth means the door of death. In other words, it can go both ways. Door to death, door to life. Going through that door. All right. The door swings both ways. And that was the point there that I was trying to show, that there are historically, or at least scripturally, a few people that apparently were changed immediately and then transformed into something else according to scripture. But that's really an exception. The basic rule is that the body's to be put down and then raised back up, in whatever the mechanism for that is. And Jesus exemplified that. He was obedient even to death, not meaning that he obeyed until he died. I mean, he was obedient to experiencing death. Okay? All right. Yeah, Barry, I think that's probably a pretty good idea, that the tree of life was, because there we go with that choice thing again. The tree of life, you can eat of any of the tree of the garden of good and evil, in the garden, but not the one of good and evil. In other words, there was some, and yet God set it up so it was going to happen anyway, right? Sort of like our tests that go here. But trees in Hebrew are actually referring to people. It's actually referring to the idea of an individual. So there's a lot of truth to that, and I have looked at that for a long time, Barry. Does death's door correlate with all things must pass? Bubba Joe, all things must pass. Um, I think you could probably make an argument for that. I think that actually you probably pointed out something here that's probably true. Why does it have to pass so that it can be raised up? Um, this world will pass away and then there'll be a new one. It doesn't mean that the earth is going to go away. It's the material side of things is going to be destroyed and turned ethereal, like like I was talking about with some of these rabbis earlier. No, it means that it's going to be elevated. It's going to be raised up. It's going to be um, exalted. But it has to go. You have to go below all things before you can rise above all things. I think it's in. You might have to help me out here. Jesus descended through the worlds that he could ascend back up through the worlds. It's the same idea. I'm not talking about reincarnation specifically, and I'm not ruling that out, but I'm saying that this is what this is talking about. Yeah, and you kind of hit on it there. Okay, it has to fall in order to be raised back up. There's a quote in Batman about that. If you saw Batman Begins, Bruce falls into that cave, and his father says, "Well, Bruce, why do we fall down? So that we can learn to get back up." Yeah, that's a good question. Walter, hi. Do we have a choice to come back here because we want to, or are we forced to come back here to learn more? I don't think God forces anything. Almost all of the punishments that are mentioned in for violating the law God put out, almost all the punishments are 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 basically to explain how serious they are, rather than that you actually did. Like, Joseph didn't stone Mary, right? In the New Testament, when she was found to be pregnant, not by him, he said, "I wanted to put her away privily." There was a situation with Tamar, right? When she got pregnant, first of all, you don't kill a pregnant woman because then you're killing innocent life. So that's out of the question anyway. But I think what we're talking about here is that I don't think God forces you at all. I think it's just like what I've said before. Um, how does God know who's supposed to be in heaven? They show up. Birds of the feather flock together. Kind mingles with kind. And I was going to say something, but there was another point of that um, as well. Um, anyway, I can't remember. There was another point I was going to bring up when you said that, and it's that I was thinking about days ago, and it has to do with that as well. That people gather around like-mindedness. In scriptural and spiritual ideas, and in quantum physics, nearness has nothing to do with being close in distance. It has to do with likeness. Nearness in the spiritual and even the quantum field means likeness. They're similar. They even communicate. They can be across the universe, as people who've studied quantum mechanics knows. They can be across the universe, and the communication is just instantaneous. So it has nothing to do with distance. It has to do with likeness, and very much the same way as this. But the next step. In other words, birds of the feather flock together. So no, I don't think you're forced to do anything. You pretty much choose it yourself. Yeah, I don't like this blind, uh, and that's really what it is. This blind um, loyalty to the state of Israel. I've talked about that on this channel. I've talked about it on Twitter, which is now X. I point people to a group called the Torah Jews on X that explain that principle, that there's a problem with Zionism and the state of Israel. That's not being anti-Semitic to be critical of people that do bad things. I don't care what they are. It's not anti-Catholic to point out a bad Catholic. I mean, look at Biden. Because I don't like Biden, am I anti-Catholic? Do I criticize Biden and therefore I'm anti-Catholic? No, he's a bad example of a Catholic. And most Zionist Jews are bad examples of Jews. Just the way it is. All right, well, we've been going for over an hour. I just wanted to give everybody a chance to come on since it's been so long. And I really do want to get to the rest of mine. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Ebionites, you know, the Hebrew word was Ebion for poor. Did you know that? I talk about it in my Crimson Thread book. In the Dead Sea Scrolls, they talk about the poor, the Ebionites. It doesn't quite mean what most Christians mean, but I'll just leave it there. Ebion. Ebionites, the poor. Thanks, everybody, for coming. I'm the smartest man you know. I feel sorry for you then, Christopher. I feel sorry for you. No, I'm not smart. You know, there was a famous pianist. What was his name? I can't believe I've forgotten his name. But anyway, he was giving he'd become very famous over the years. And I think his name starts with a G, but anyway. And he was at a dinner party or something, and he was playing the piano for the people that were there. And a man came up to him and said, "Man, it would take me my whole lifetime to learn how to play like that." And his answer was, "It did. It took me a whole lifetime." So I don't know if it's about smart, it's about effort. I think it's about effort. And willing to see the obvious and to not believe something just because the consensus believes it. I don't go down the same path as everybody else. I never have. I'm not saying I don't try it. I don't say that I don't experience it, but inevitably, like with this, who does this? Who's showing you this? I did notice. I don't know that they got it from me, because there are obviously other people know about Notar Khan, Tamora, Thashrak, Galatry, and all that. But somebody sent me a video of a lady who broke down the word Bereshit, the first word in the Old Testament, in Genesis 1:1, in the beginning, and she broke it down. She showed how it was almost exactly, she showed that in the word Bereshit is the whole plan of salvation, and she's absolutely right. The only one that I contested, and I didn't say she was wrong about it, but I gave it a kind of other meaning. The shin in there doesn't mean that he would be destroyed on the cross. It's in Bereshit. Not that he would be destroyed on the cross, but that he would win a crown by going to the cross. Big difference. I think that's the only thing that she did something. Many tekelu farson. Yeah. You've been weighed, you have been measured, and you've been found wanting. Yeah. You mean me, Annie? Maybe so. Maybe so. Acts is not a reliable source. I just said that, remember? Anything to do with Paul, Acts is not reliable. Acts contradicts itself. I haven't got time to go here and show you where that happens, but it contradicts itself. So, the name Jesus, okay, I'm going to end with this. God sends the angel of the Lord, and he says, "Do whatever he says to do, because my name is in him." In other words, he has the attributes. He isn't him, and you don't have to believe in him. You have to have work to have the attributes. And I could list what those are. They're numerous. But basically, it's righteousness, okay? So the name Jesus, do you really know what Jesus Yeshua HaMashiach, that's in the Hebrew. In the Greek, it's Jesus Christ. That's not his name. Jesus Christ is not his name. It's his calling. It's his office. Therefore, you can have that office too. There are different degrees. I'm not taking anything away from Jesus. The point is, you are to be like him. He will be the heir to all that the Father has, and you will be a co-heir with him. The name Yeshua HaMashiach basically means the anointed who will save. David, the king of Israel, was a Yeshua HaMashiach. Joshua, where the name comes from, Yeshua is based on Joshua, the name Joshua, or Yahshua. Okay, it's based on that. So the name Jesus and the name Joshua are actually the same name in the Hebrew. Joshua was a savior. He was a Mashiach. He saved his people. Don't get hung up on this. Okay? You take the name of Yeshua HaMashiach on you. Merely believing isn't it. Belief means you do something. You do it. You exemplify it. You represent it. Otherwise, you're committing a blasphemy. And with that, remember, we're going through this, but on the other side, there's the promise if you believe in Genesis and if you believe in this plan, that you will have your spirit and your physical reunited in a manner that is indissoluble, that cannot be broken. And there will be wonderful things to come. And there's nothing wrong with that. This isn't evil. People say, oh, the flesh. I just pointed out that little tiny, God took all that time to make that little tiny cell, that intricate cell that nobody can even make today. God doesn't make things to destroy them. He makes them to elevate them, to exalt them. And I'll leave that with you. Y'all have a great night. Thanks for coming, and we'll talk to you next time out here.